What is up, everyone? The year 2025 just started a few days ago, and I think the best way to start this year off, in my opinion, is to do what I do best, spreading negativity. And unfortunately for these guys, I'm going to be talking about, they are beyond cooked. And what I mean by that is they'll probably find themselves out of the rankings or get cut from the UFC because there is just no way they're going to win their next few fights. I'm going to be talking about one guy from each division, from flyweight to heavyweight. And without wasting any more time, let's jump right into the video. For flyweight, I'm going to go with Tim Elliott. This guy is somehow still ranked at the young age of 37. Interestingly enough, he hasn't fought at all in 2024, and I think that's the only reason he's still ranked at this point. I'm not going to pick Tim Elliott to beat anyone actually talented, and the only matchups Elliott is going to get from here on out are young and upcoming prospects who are very talented. Even if he doesn't fight, there's just so many fights going on in the division right now. It's hard to believe that Tim Elliott is going to stay as the number 10 ranked flyweight currently because there are a lot of talented guys that are outside of the rankings looking for someone coming off a loss within the rankings. And Tim Elliott, you're going to be pretty cooked by the end of this year, and I would be shocked if you are still in the rankings by the end of 2025. For Bantamweight, I'm gonna go with somebody that a lot of people seem to forget about, Kyler Phillips. Listen, I was happy for Rob Font when he fought Kyler Phillips because Font is a cool guy with fun fight stuff, but you just can't lose to Rob Font in 2024 and expect to be ranked that much longer. Rob Font is the guy the UFC prospects get when the UFC wants to fast track them into the top 10. And the guys who beat Font end up within the top five at some point, whereas the guys who lose to Font are out of the rankings shortly after because the bantamweight division is stacked, and the only freebie you get is Rob Font. It's not even just because he lost to Rob Font, because as much as I trashed Font just now, he is a very nasty boxer, but it's the way he lost to Rob Font. Phillips, he didn't do anything for his first 5 minutes other than just take Font down and hold him down, doing nothing else. But then he just gassed out from there on out, and Rob Font just pieced him up from rounds 2 and 3. And also, Phillips's boxing is atrocious. Somehow, he was able to get into the top 15 without knowing how to throw an effective 1-2. Phillips is probably gonna have to fight someone very dangerous on the come up with at least 5 wins in a row. And in this division, the guy who's coming off a hot streak is probably the one who's going to defeat someone coming off a fat ass fraud check. Kyler Phillips, your time in the bantamweight weight rankings is going to be finished soon, and you're going to be well done out of there by the end of this year. We're going to move on to featherweight. Edson Barboza. I love you, man, but you are so cooked if you fight Steve Garcia next month. I can't pick Barboza to win fights in 2025 when he's 38 years old, and the only dangerous part of his game currently is a wheel kick. And it's kind of sad to watch because Barboza used to be able to do a lot more than just throw a wheel kick. But he's taken so much damage over his last few fights, regardless of the result, and he's a lot slower than usual. Again, he's fighting Steve Garcia, who's a dangerous knockout artist. I would have picked Barboza to fraud check Garcia if he was 2 years younger, because I don't think Garcia has a diverse set of skills outside of just knocking people out. But in 2025, 38 years old Barboza, who's taken an ungodly amount of punishment over his last 5 fights, I just don't see how he beats Steve Garcia. When he fought Leroy Murphy a couple of months back, I thought it was elderly abuse watching that fight. I would have rather seen Barboza quickly get knocked out in like 2, 3 minutes instead of Barboza getting torched up for 25 minutes straight. He's gonna get knocked out by Steve Garcia, and it's sad because it's probably gonna be the end of Barboza's career, unless he pulls a Tony Ferguson, which at that point you're cooked for sure. We're gonna move on to the lightweight division. I'm gonna pick Jalin Turner. It's actually amazing how this guy is still ranked at lightweight with a 14-8 record, but at this point, I don't think the UFC is gonna give him favorable matchups anymore. How many times are we going to give Turner favorable matchups before we realize Turner is not going anywhere near the top 10? He lost to Dan Hooker, Mateusz Gamrot, and Renato Moicano. I don't see Turner getting any other favorable matchup anytime soon, which means he's going to have to fight someone dangerous on the come up. If he fights a primary striker, I can see Turner being able to hold his spot and hand that prospect a fat ass fraud check. But this guy cannot stop a takedown to save his own life. There is a clear blueprint on how to effectively beat Jalin Turner because Moicano beat the dog shit out of him at UFC 300 with little resistance once he took Turner down. I think anyone who is good enough to stay defensively responsible on the feet and someone who is willing enough to shoot a double leg will beat Jalin Turner pretty easily. And that's going to be it for Turner this year in the rankings. And who knows where he goes from here on out. We're going to move on to the welterweight division. There are a lot of old heads who are probably going to retire soon. You have Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Colby Covington. But the guy I'm going to pick for sure is going to be out of the rankings by 2025. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He's lost 4 out of his last 5 fights, and it's all because of the takedown threat. There is a clear path to defeating Wonderboy Thompson if you know how to shoot an effective double leg. Even if you can't submit Wonderboy, which is very hard to do, it just drains Wonderboy's gas tank, and you can clearly see that in all of Wonderboy's fights. Not to mention, Wonderboy is 41 years old, coming off a nasty knockout loss to Joaquin Buckley. And it's pretty clear that Wonderboy, while he's a great technical striker, he doesn't pose any threat to knock people out. So guys have been able to just pressure him up against the fence and then either shoot a double leg and take him down or just knock him out. It's going to be harder and harder for him every fight because, again, he's 41 years old and the UFC is not going to be doing him any favors anytime soon. I hope that Wonderboy doesn't get knocked out and he just retires peacefully pretty soon. For the middleweight division, we have Jared Cannonier. First off, he's 41 years old and he almost died in his last fight against Kyle Valhalla. Second, guy's not getting any favors from the UFC because for some reason, the UFC really hate this guy. He's fighting Gregory Rodriguez next, who is a dangerous up and comer. Prime Cannonier, I would have picked to knock out Rodriguez because Rodriguez does not move his head very well, and Cannonier has been able to take advantage of that factor in past fights. But in 2025, 41 years old Cannonier, who almost died in his last fight, I just don't see it. Rodriguez is a dangerous prospect. He has a lot of power in his hands, and he's crazy good at jiu-jitsu if the fight takes place to the ground. I hope Cannonier wins because he's a fighter I root for, considering how dirty the UFC keep treating this man. But unfortunately, all the signs point to this guy getting overcooked and eventually casted out of the UFC by the end of this year. For the light heavyweight division, it should not be a surprise. It's Anthony Smith. The only thing that surprises me is how this guy's still ranked in 2025. How many times are we going to repeat the same mistake over and over again, UFC? Stop letting Anthony Smith trying to fight, period. His fights are so depressing to watch. He just curls up in the fetal position in the middle of every fight just to not get finished. What's worse is when he wins, he believes he's this championship caliber contender. Like, no, Anthony Smith. We've seen this movie 10 times already, and just hang the gloves up at this point and join the analyst desk or the UFC is just going to keep sending you dangerous prospects to knock your ass out repeatedly. If Anthony Smith is still ranked by the end of 2025, it just shows how awful the light heavyweight division truly is. He should not be ranked right now, but for some reason he still is. So by 2025, he should be out of the rankings. Last but not least, we get to the heavyweight division. This is also a no-brainer for me. Tai Tuivasa. How are you 0-5 in your last 5 fights and still ranked within the top 15? I don't understand it. At what point is the UFC just going to cut this guy off the roster? He has given no indication that he's going to win his next fight. He eats Taco Bell minutes before his fights, and he trains at Planet Fitness. Like, how is this guy still ranked in the UFC? And listen, I want Tuivasa to succeed because he's a very fun personality. But at some point, we have to understand that Tuivasa reaching number 3 in the heavyweight division is a fluke. How did this guy almost get a title shot in 2020 or 2021 while Eric Cartman maxing? It actually amazes me how truly awful every heavyweight is. But in 2025, I think the poor diet and just like the lack of effort in his training really shows in his fights. I expect him to be out of the rankings sometime in the middle of 2025. All right, that's where I'm going to end the video for today. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.